Hi, DIFESTers. My name is Rodinov Vincent, and I am the founder of DIFEST Global. A warm welcome to you all on the third edition. This year, DIFEST will focus on the future of work by addressing authenticity, belongingness, and social impact as some of the most important practices for building a more inclusive and purpose driven workforce for everyone to thrive. Before we begin, I would like to humbly thank our belonging partner, Newsela, for supporting our initiative in democratizing world class content and promoting equity in education. On this note, I would like to welcome you to our session on leveraging DEIB practices to create a social impact, what companies are doing to be socially responsible. Our moderator for today is a senior DEI professional who helps organizations overcome barriers to adopt and integrate DEI holistically. With more than 2 decades of experience, she helps designing and executing DEI programs and initiatives in the workplace while advocating for intentional inclusion. She has worked on multiple initiatives and programs in various areas, including gender equality, LGBTQ inclusion, disability inclusion, and bias programs for underrepresented communities in the workplace. Please welcome Tina Vinod.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Rudy, for that introduction. And I have with me today Elena, Gilberto, and Chandra. They're from 3 different countries. We're going to have a wonderful conversation today on leveraging DAIB for social impact. We'll start with a quick round of introductions, and then we can go ahead. Elena, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'm Elena Primikiri. I'm head of ESG for DIFEST Global. I've joined the company almost a year and a half ago. And my responsibility is to run a lot of initiatives, strategies, and programs around all of the elements of E, S, and G. So very briefly.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elena. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you today. Chandra, would you like to go next?
Certainly, Tina. Thank you so much. My name is Chandra Duraiswamy. I lead global communications for LM Wind Power based out of Bangalore. I also wear another hat. I am a DEI activist, and I also co-lead the Pride Pillar for GE South Asia.
Thank you so much, Chandra. Chandra is also a very good friend, and we've partnered on a lot of DEI initiatives together. Gilberto, over to you.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today to talk about D&I initiatives as well. My name is Gilberto Costa. I'm from Brazil. I'm living in the US now. I'm the executive director for the Pact for Racial Equity. I'm also an executive director at JP Morgan Chase in the US. So I'm having been pushing the D&I agenda on Onshore Brazil society for a long time. And it's a great opportunity today to talk about D&I initiatives and also in terms of, ESG racial actions to tackle the racial inequality.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's so true. We are from different countries. We are from different organizations. But inequities exist in different forms, in different ways. And today, organizations have a larger role to play, not only internally in seeing what they can invest and do for their employees and for their organization, but even externally. When we were talking about this particular topic, with Rudina, who drives DIFEST, one of the things we spoke about is how companies separated corporate social responsibility or ESG from their DEI initiatives, right? In the past, CSR was considered like an external philanthropic initiative, whereas DEI was internal. And that gap is changing with the whole ESG strategy coming in. As cited in a recent HBR article, until the mid-2010s, few investors paid attention to ESG data. Information about carbon footprint, labor policies, board, makeup, or even pay parity were not something that investors looked at. But today, that data is widely important. Many investors screen poor ESG performers out, assuming that the factors that cause companies to review low ESG ratings will result in weak financial results. Let's look at the Gen Z today, right? And they are in the workforce. And one of the research shares that Gen Z care deeply about purpose-driven organizations, and organizations will be able to retain Gen Zers a lot more if they are purpose-driven and are able to engage Gen Zers in their ESG or their DEI programs. And so you can see how, right, whether it's investors or the youngest people in your organization, today DEI, social impact, ESG matters. And so I'll go over to Elena first. And, Elena, my first question to you is, as the head of ESG for VFS Global, how do you weave in the DEI aspects to your organization's commitment to social impact, whether it is ESG principles, any initiatives that you can share?
Okay, thanks Tina so much. Very well said. And I would add that apart from investors, even employees are looking more confident joining companies who have more ESG, elements into it. So it's not just the investors and even the customers and the consumers are becoming more and more engaged. So, but anyway, thank you so much for this event, and I would like to thank my co-panelists Gilberto and Chandra. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and of course Rudinov for this amazing opportunity to participate in the third edition of DIFEST Global event. Allow me to say just a few things about who is VFS. First of all, I'm right now I'm talking to you from Dubai, so this is where we're based. VFS is an outsourcing company for visa application processing, and it spreads across 140 countries with more than 9,000 employees and over 126 nationalities. So diversity for us, it's more of a part of our DNA. Given our mandate, serving 65 client governments, because our main customers is actually the client governments, we feel responsible to leverage our industry leadership to promote sustainability practices and define strategies and actions based on impact assessment, and thereby creating social value, right? Because if you cannot measure, how can you improve? Our ESG strategy is based on 5 pillars, contributing to sustainable economic growth, delivering good governance, nurturing our colleagues, protecting our environment, supporting our communities. And each of these pillars are very carefully selected and aligned with the organization's business strategy. And that's a key element when you design strategies of that sort, how you kind of align it with your business strategy, how you align it with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because it's a big priority for our client governments, and how do you align it with other stakeholders, shareholders, investors, customers, employees, everyone. So this strategy is embedded within the organization of VFS. That was the second thing that we wanted to do. It's more of an embedded approach and a cross-functional approach, so that we can have more, again, maximize our impact. And through this strategy, we show, of course, considerable focus on D&I. So part of the, and D&I, from the holistic point of view, often the term sustainability is misused or misunderstood, let me put it more correctly. And we think that it only involves effort pertaining to the environment. However, as we know, sustainability has 3 pillars. So you have the environment, you have the economy, and you have the society. So we're getting the balance of all these 3, when you're talking about true sustainable development. And good sustainability strategies must embrace these diverse communities and the voices within them. And a workforce that represents diverse ethnic and social backgrounds is more likely to understand how a business operation affects different communities. And there's also evidence that diverse companies are more productive when making changes and solving existing challenges. So the S from the ESG focuses on human rights, health and safety, freedom of expression, and social sustainability through employee practices, through policies, and in succeeding within the S pillar. But D&I cannot be limited only to S. It's not a standalone thing. It's not just HR practice. It's something much more, and it's how you support the community as a whole. So, for example, how do you promote minorities for underrepresented groups? How do you give them opportunities to build skills, whether it's Gen Z, whether it's allyship program, apprenticeship programs that you have for young generation, and how you can help them create career paths. So it is a little bit of a combination of a CSR, a little bit of a combination of how internally you support them. This is how we are thinking it also from VFS perspective. So we have numerous of initiatives that we follow to enhance D&I, whether it's skill development programs, whether it's women empowerment programs, whether it's programs with NGOs or with our client governments, with diversity experts, to create an inclusive environment that our diversified communities within the organization feel safe, to perform to the best of their ability, but also across all our stakeholders, including our supply chain and everybody involved on the way of doing our business.
Thank you so much, Elena. I think you put it together so beautifully. And when you talk about DEI, DEI cuts across E and G as well. When we look at even environment or climate change, it's the marginalized communities that are impacted the most. It cuts across the entire ESG framework. Coming to you, Gilberto, could you share how do the social impact programs in Brazil help support underserved communities? Example, people of color, and how do you address opportunity gaps?
So, Brazil is a country where the social and economic inequality is deeply related to the racial issue, right? Because of the historical situation, because of the way that, racism was, treated in Brazil as well. According to the local data body in 2016, among, I would say, 10% of the most poorest population in Brazil, 78% are black. And the majority of them live in ghettos or favelas or, comunidades in Brazil, like, people with low income, with no opportunity, with no access to education. In the opposite, if we take a look, among the 10% of the wealthy people in Brazil, 73% they are white. So we see here a huge gap, right, between the black population, the non-black population as well. This is a clear result of the impact of the socio-economic inequality brings to the black population, and the absence of clear affirmative action from a government standpoint, for the inclusion of black population in the economy, plus the institutional racism, plus the low quality of public education, which is a fundamental for everyone, this could be pointed as a key factors for the, this high level of inequality in our country. Mainly for the low-income communities, ghettos of favela community, those people, they lack access of government support as well. So the way that I see it now, like, there is a growing concern from companies and the civil society in terms of how to connect everyone in the same agenda. And ESG is this link, right? ESG is something that everyone understands. We have institutional investors, we have shareholders, we have companies, we have civil society, we have the black population, everyone working together, in partnership with the philanthropy sector to address those challenges from a social inequality standpoint and from a D&I standpoint as well. So, my opinion, coming from a low income community in Rio de Janeiro, probably some of you guys know Rio de Janeiro, where we have the favelas, we have the black communities and across the state as well. I see that the way that we are addressing those new challenges is through the partnership. There is no way to philanthropy to support everything, right? In the past, companies and government, they put, okay, HR is the one responsible to tackle this agenda. Oh, no, talk to my philanthropy body who is being in charge of, dealing with those inequalities. We cannot do that anymore because you need a huge investment in public education to help those people that they were not part of the the affirmative actions to thrive. And the only way to do it is going back and to help people with public education, to help people with training, to have people with black entrepreneurships, to help black people and also low-income communities to have access, a good government service. So I believe that after some events like George Floyd, everyone now is following the same agenda in working partnership, between those four key partners to make sure that we are able to fight this inequality. I'm very positive now because in Brazil I see a lot of movements that trying to to overcome this type of situation. For example, the Pact for Racial Equity that was launched 2 years ago in a partnership between civil society, third sector, investor, and companies. So I believe that in the long term we will be able to overcome those issues.
Thank you, Gilberto. That was so well said. Affirmative action is fundamental for everyone. And you also spoke about how ESG today is the link that brings together investors, stakeholders, civil societies, employers, employees, underrepresented communities together. And that's so true, right? Now, today we have something like ESG that can be beautifully utilized as a framework across organizations. Chandra, coming to you, you work in Wind Power, which is a subsidiary of GE. But when you say wind power, you think of environment, the E. But you are a DEI, advocate and a leader in the DEI space as well, and in the communication space. So I'm sure the ESG aspects of your organization is not new to you. But how do you ensure you weave in DEI in the ESG investments of your organization?
Um, Thank you, Tina. Great question. See, we are a wind turbine manufacturer. We manufacture blades for wind turbines, and we have 13 plants around the world. 50 nationalities work for us. So, which means it is enormous. I mean, look at the cultural aspect of it. Look at the intersectionality. Um, you know, um, so we want to make everybody feel belong and included. And we're also the first organization to achieve net zero in the wind industry because sustainability has always been top of the mind, be it people or be it the environment. What we ideally do is, when we look at an angle of CSR, right, we try and map it to our DEI. And we look at it from a local lens, caring for the planet, to the community around us, and how we can work towards the empowerment and financial upliftment. For example, one of our factories is located outskirts of Bangalore, between Bangalore and Tumkur, and we've executed some of the CSR initiatives that I'm going to describe below. Like described, right? Women empowerment in rural. First, when LM started to, we said we wanted to have gender diversity because shop floor is a male bastion. When we wanted to attract women talent, a lot of these women in the rural areas were not willing to work for us because the male members in their family decided what they did. And they were not willing to wear uniforms because they were all in their traditional clothing. So which means our HR, a lot of women are there in our HR, went to their homes, convinced their brothers, their fathers, their husbands to ensure that these people can come to work, and they are being respected, their safety is ensured, we'll pick them up, we will drop them. So we had to build in these equations, not just in terms of recruitment of women for our plant, but also we looked at how can we empower other women who are not willing to come to our plant and work. For example, vocational training opportunities for them. How can we ensure that they can be self-employed, thereby they will be financially secure and independent, because that is not available in many parts of the world. Next is quality education. We continue to sponsor education for children from financially poor families. We doesn't stop in terms of sponsoring, but then we also have our volunteers go there and teach people on, there is a huge digital divide. COVID has exposed that as well. So how can we reduce the digital divide to ensure that these children in schools also know how to go online, how to surf, how to get the information, because everything is available at the click of the mouse or twiddle of a thumb today. So how can they also ensure that their safety, their privacy, their identity is not compromised? Uh, Today, we all struggle to get clean water and sanitation in many places in the world. So we've ensured that there's clean drinking water for everybody. This could be Maslow's pyramid. Food, shelter, clothing, all of this is a Maslow's pyramid, but we ensure that we focus on the pyramid, and ensure people are able to aspire for something above, get to the next level, and eventually to the self-actualization stage. Uh, Not just for people, we also care deeply for the environment. We've rejuvenated multiple lakes in the area. We've improved the green cover. And when COVID happened, right, we went out, we gave masks, we gave medicines, we also gave food rations to people, ensure nobody suffers.
Oh, thank you, Chandra. You spoke about some of the smaller things that mattered from a cultural standpoint, right? And going and convincing the family to send, the women in their families to the factory, and that is something that we don't even expect to do in our roles in our corporate roles, right? But how we need to think beyond our roles itself to do the extra to bring inclusion. I think was very, that example was wonderful, and we see that all the time around us. And also the holistic approach, right? When you're looking at water, sanitation, you're looking at education, you're looking at support during the pandemic. I think that approach I think is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Elena, moving to you. How do you build cultural intelligence by assessing the social impact of business activities? For example, inclusive language, right? You all are spread across 100 plus regions. What are the aspects on inclusion and shared culture that you all have been doing at VFS? I'd love to hear some examples as well.
Sure. I mean, the examples are pretty much, I mean, best practices is what we pick up everybody, right? And we look at and we learn from each other. And these are the workshops, in workshops like this, we kind of pick up nice ideas so that everybody can implement. But for us, I think what helped us in this direction was to set specific strategies, set specific KPIs, set specific action plans towards the D&I agenda for our employees, for our vendors, for our communities, for our societies, and some of the measures that different organizations can implement. These facilitate in building an organizational culture because it kind of shows you where you want to go and then how you're going to reach there and then how you implement it is quite important. But we must always bear in mind that culture has to be embedded in the day-to-day business, not something that you just do on an abstract way, because you need to maximize your impact, and to do so you have to implement it on within the operations of the organization. At the same time, there is the need for constant communication to emphasize the D&I activities that the organization is carrying out, and to highlight the focus that different organizations have. Because what we've realized is the moment we start communicating that we are very active in this front and we want to be an inclusive organization, you won't believe how many ideas came from different locations, from different regions. And this is what we want to do. We don't have the answer for everything, but what we want to do is to make sure that we address the challenges that local and global, either in local or in global areas we have to face. And to that end, we are taking conscious steps to enhance our diversity culture. And for example, we have created an inclusive language guide. And for our people to educate them for the do's and don'ts, and be careful how they speak, how they address few things. We try to battle the biases. What Chandra mentioned is basically the bias that you have in the men's mind that the female should be at home taking care of the kids and the mothers and the family. But how you battle this is what's important. And one is the conscious, but then you have the unconscious bias, which is even harder to battle. And then you have to look at your media campaigns. You have to look at and really address the elements within the commercials that you use, and making sure you don't actually promote these old fashioned ideas, let's say. We also look at our allyship program that aims to facilitate communication and address any discrimination that you may have. So when you create allyship on the different diversified teams, you allow a better communication among the people who belong to these specific groups, and they can feel they're more understood, they can feel more safe to express themselves, and then in that way they would be feeling more included within the organization. So these are some of the initiatives that we are taking to set the path for an inclusive language internally.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. You spoke about advertisements, and I'd recently shared that UNICEF had done a study on Indian advertisements, and they did a massive study, and what the study showed was that Indian ads reinforce gender bias and stereotypes. So they are more sexually objectified. Women are more likely to be depicted partially nude and always seen in caregiver roles. So I think that is something that and there are so many influences, right? Not just on our generation, but on our future generation as well, that we need to keep in mind. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Moving to you, Gilberto, it would be good if you can share any initiatives specific to racial inequity or DEI that has been undertaken in Brazil. You did talk about a racial ESG framework that you developed that's been adopted by close to 27 organizations. It'll be good for you to share, if you can share, how Data Insights provides guidance in driving the DEI and the ESG agenda.
So, I have been working on the financial interest for more than 30 years. So I'm a man number, right? So I'm based in numbers and statistics and everything. So 2 years ago, we were looking into the way that the racial inequality was fighting Brazil and the way that we were trying to address it. And in our view as a group, as a team, was okay, let's work to implement a racial ESG protocol to provide companies a clear view in terms of how to measure the racial inequality inside the companies, creating a racial ESG protocol index to measure this inequality against the Black population in the ecosystem that the company works, how to build and how to develop a protocol to measure affirmative actions, and how to build and implement a protocol to measure social investment with focus on racial equity. Those three pillars, they help companies to drive the agenda, because when you measure, you are able to understand, okay, this is the point A where I am, I want to go to the point B, those are the actions that I need to implement in the long term. I personally strongly believe that affirmative actions, they can solve the problem in the short term, but they cannot solve the problem in the long term, in the long run, right? The way that everyone can solve the racial inequality and the social inequality in the long term is through public education. Because when we provide people, enough support for them to have, access to public education, good public education, to health training, to everything, they will thrive. So this racial ESG protocol was implemented 1 year ago. Now we have 30 companies. We have Bayer. We have global companies, global banks supporting the racial ESG protocol in Brazil. And the racial ESG index that was launched, now we are implementing a racial ESG index with focus in Black women, because we believe that we have a strong, huge, gap on the Black women standpoint in Brazil as well. So those actions, I believe, that will help society to put first the racial ESG protocol is a partnership with everyone. It's not only the Black population, it's Black population plus institutional investors, plus government, plus civil society, plus companies to try to help to work in the same agenda. And because this requires a lot of investment, and to do those investments, we should be able to measure those results, right? So this is exactly why the ESG racial protocol was implemented 1 year ago.
Oh, that's so wonderful to know. And I'm sure the framework can be used for other marginalized, underrepresented communities as well, right?
For sure. We started with Black communities, then we moved it to launch in November for the Black women, and in 2023 first quarter, well, we are launching the same index for the indigenous.
Wonderful, wonderful. Gilberto, you should consider open sourcing your framework for all of us to adopt.
It will be great.
Yeah, it would be really good. Thank you so much. And today there are quite a few frameworks that are there. There are organizations who are having, who are looking at impact-driven measurements of ESG, whether it is providing heat maps or telling you where you are on your, whether it's DEI or your ESG journey. So coming to you, Chandra, can you share some programs where, and efforts in LM Wind Power, where your employees have been involved in social impact initiatives to drive larger inclusion and empathy and understanding? Because as we all know, especially, post-pandemic, engagement of our employees in DEI initiatives is a challenge. And that is something that we are all trying different strategies, different ways of engagements, different initiatives as well. So I'd love to hear from you, Chandra.
Thank you, Tina. At GE and at LM Wind Power, we've always gone beyond checkbook charity. Tina, you shared a statistic saying that Gen Zs always want to connect to an organization through the purpose. So we have launched, it's been around for quite some time at GE, what is called the volunteering programs. So we list down various CSR initiatives where our people can volunteer, can be a part of, from registering to teach at a school, to mentoring students in rural areas of India, guide government schools to host science fairs, so on and so forth. And apart from the digital divide and trying to create that awareness around digital safety, so volunteering programs is something we heavily focus on. We get our people engaged. Second, the ongoing situation in Ukraine. There are a lot of refugees. Our people in Europe, we have around half a dozen plants in Europe. So our people in Europe have done their outreach from providing temporary shelters to these refugees, giving them food, medical supplies, teaching them local languages, employing them in our plants, ensure that they get a livelihood opportunity. They will be able to settle down in the new country where they currently live in, help them to integrate faster with the society, because that, if you're not able to help them integrate faster, that creates a huge divide as well. We have approximately 300 Ukrainians working for us. Very proud to say we have 300 Ukrainians working for us. alongside, right, we don't even just look at our progress. We also want people in the supply chain, people in the industry to join us. So in Europe specifically, we launched this initiative called Winclusion. It's an industry initiative to attract diverse talent to join the wind industry and accelerate energy transition. While we care for people, we also have to care for the planet. So we've been trying to balance this, ensure that we care for the planet. We also onboard our people and get them on this journey as well. For example, another factory in the remote area in Canada, Gaspé, right? We've integrated the Filipino community there through cultural awareness, through trainings, through jobs. We don't want anybody in any remote corner, whether if you're a minority, we don't want you to be left behind economically. So we've been doing that. And of course, we have around 8 to 9 ERGs for underrepresented and marginalized group in the company, to promote awareness, to also create inclusion, foster a sense of inclusion and belongingness in the organization. Now, coming to LGBT community, right? We held pride marches across all our plants this year, to raise awareness, build a culture of acceptance and inclusions. Like shared earlier, right, the shop floor is a male bastion, and that is fast changing in our organization. We've put management programs to help women leaders in the organization grow and lead. We currently have one complete mold in LM that is handled by women. Many a times we have this bias, like what Elena said. Men have the bias that, oh, maybe women are not strong enough to handle. But then women have proved that they're capable, and they're able to produce things with same quality or better quality as assembly lines that are completely managed by men. Lastly, touching on the employees with disabilities, we have employees with disabilities and veterans as well as a part of our family. We ensure that they feel welcomed, integrated, and have access to opportunities. We have taken their successes and we have created stories. We call them the game changers, and we put them on our website so that the world outside can also learn from what we're doing in our own little microcosm.
Thank you, Chandra. So beautifully put. We don't have too much of time, so I'm going to ask one question which the three of you can answer. What would be your advice for organizations who are early on or starting on their ESG or their DEI journey?
So, is that for me? Shall I start then?
It's for all three of you.
Okay.
You can go first, Elena.
I think that one of the major things that I would say, and I think we've said this already, is to listen to your stakeholders, right? I think it's for me, it's the most important thing. Understanding who are your stakeholders and understanding what are the needs of your stakeholders. Different organizations with presence in different countries have different ways of delivering D&I strategies and action plans and initiatives. So my first thing would be first to listen to your stakeholders. The second thing is, what is the role that the organization wants to play? To give you an example, because we work with client governments, right? We have a dual role. The one is the implementer. So when we implement regulations or specific requirements for our client governments, and the other one is the initiator or influencer. So, it's a role that you can take. You can just stick to just being whatever you are requested and just do this, or you want to enhance your role and have, being an influencer. So where you go and influence the other client governments in other regions, in other locations, and say, listen, this is what the rest of the world is doing, and why don't you also do something similar like that? So second thing, what is the role of the organization? And third thing for me would be, how do you align with the best practices and what is the world is doing? So looking to tie up with, for example, there's the United Nations Unstereotype Alliance, just because we talked about the advertisements and learn from these organizations, tie up with these organizations and implement the best practices that they have to offer. So these are the three top things I would say as an advice from my end.
I want to add here.
Please, Gilberto.
I want to add here 2 or 3 points. First, we should be intentional. We need to be intentional to solve the D&I issue, to solve the social inequality. As a company, we need to be very intentional. It's not only about a LinkedIn beautiful phrase. It's about putting money on the table, and about investing people, and about training people as well. Second, D&I is different. D&I in Brazil is something, D&I in India is another thing. So we need to respect those, singularities for each country. And the last one, D&I, guys, is part of the business. D&I is not part of HR. D&I is not part of the diversity and inclusion team, or no, D&I is part of the business. Company that they don't have D&I as part of their agenda, they will have a problem in 10 years from now. Because, McKinsey and the other, consultant, they have already proven that D&I companies, they were able to have more profitability at the future, in the long-term run. So those three combinations will help us to keep driving this agenda, be intentional, putting D&I as part of the business strategy as well, and also respecting, each country's singularity.
Absolutely, so beautifully said, Gilberto, and that's one of the challenges that many organizations face, where DEI is seen as part of the the HR function, or a talent acquisition function, and sometimes it's very difficult because it's very important that the business recognizes the importance of DEI, and having it as part of your business agenda, where DEI is actually reporting in directly to the business stakeholders becomes very, very important. That's beautifully said. Chandra, over to you.
I have just one more point to add. Many organizations have a global DEI charter. So I would say, take the global, but then localize it.
True.
Because what is important for that culture, what is important for that community, you have to go out and understand what is important for them, what are their wants, what are their needs, and how can I plug their wants and needs into my DEI goals. So many organizations don't look at that. They only look at the mother, the umbrella goals, but then, we'll have to connect in with the local communities and bring in the local flavor. So I think I would add that to our list.
Absolutely. And I'm sure all of us have had that experience, right? I mean, even with Thoughtworks, we have offices in 15 plus regions, and that's the struggle, right? You take global action, and how do you localize it? What are the different areas from a local regional perspective that you will need to invest in? And I think that's beautifully put. Thank you so much. And there are so many golden words and advices that we can take away from today's session from all of you. So thank you so much. I think post-pandemic, we continue to see issues and inequalities that remain overlooked, be it eco, gender, racial inequities, or the impact of climate change on the marginalized. While the pandemic has highlighted the need for organizations to not only revisit their internal DEI efforts, but also to look externally on the influence they can have on the world at large. So a holistic approach to DEI and ESG is what's needed today. And I think there are many organizations who are doing it really well. And it's important as part of conferences like DIFEST that we share our learnings, our best practices, and our mistakes too, as part of this journey. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to connecting with you all. And Gilberto, on the framework, I'm going to come back to you on that.
Good.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Hi, DIFESTers. My name is Rodinov Vincent, and I'm the founder of DIFEST Global. A warm welcome to you all on the third edition. This year, DIFEST will focus on the future of work by addressing authenticity, belongingness, and social impact as some of the most important practices for building a more inclusive and purpose driven workforce for everyone to thrive. Before we begin, I would like to humbly thank our belonging partner, Newsella, for supporting our initiative in democratizing world class content and promoting equity in education. On this note, I would like to welcome you to our session on how do employees with neurodiversity drive innovation. Our moderator for today is a tech diva for almost 20 years, working as an engineer and engineering leader. By day, she works in cybersecurity as a solutions director at Palo Alto Networks, and at night, she is dedicated to spark success of women in technology careers with the Tech Diva Success Collection. She is also the author of three best selling books, hostess of two Clarion Award winning podcasts, and spends time in the community both speaking and helping advise in board roles. Please welcome Nicole Johnson Scheffler.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm a pleasure to be here and really want to welcome everyone to this amazing event. I also want to welcome JJ, our guest. So we're going to kick it off from here with our wonderful session on how neurodiversity drives innovation, something that we're both passionate about. And what I would love to do is have JJ, you introduce yourself to the audience and share why us, why is this important to you, and why are you here today? Thank you so much for coming. I can't wait for this conversation.
Thank you, Nicole. Hi, everyone. My name's John Jacob Cherian, but everyone calls me JJ. I think the only time I'm addressed as John Jacob is when I've done something naughty by my parents, but we'll keep that for another conversation. I run a demand strategy for IBM software across APAC and Japan region. And it's a fun job because I get to work with people from different cultures and different time zones. So, inclusion star is very much part of my day-to-day job. But on a personal note, I have lived the experience of being neurodivergent. I'm dyslexic and I have ADHD. And it took me quite a lot of time to get into a rhythm. And I finally realized that the reason why it was hard for me to sort of fit in a regular term was that people were not aware, people were not sure how to interact and be inclusive. So I felt that the best way to do this was just to make people aware, talk about my lived experience, and carry on being inclusive.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Both of us actually share that in common, coming from tech, where it is important that we have neurodiversity for innovation. We absolutely need innovation. I consider myself an ally at this point, but hey, I'm pretty creative, so who knows, right? But I think that in my studies, I like to share about 2D diversity. Often we'll look at diversity as a gender or a race. And what we're here to talk about is a broader a look at neurodiversity. In fact, I'd love to share kind of a definition for those out there on the broadcast, watching this broadcast. We welcome you and we want to hear from you as well, whether you're connecting to us one-on-one, but definitely in the chat if you're live. And we really appreciate this. So just a level set on the definition of neurodiversity. This is from Harvard Business Review. So it's just a common level set so that we understand what we're talking about. But it describes this idea that simply people experience and interact with the world around them in different ways. And there's not one right way of thinking or learning or behaving, and really that our differences are not viewed as deficits. And that is just absolutely critical. And the word neurodiversity specifically doesn't doesn't refer to diversity of all people, but it's often used in the context of an autism spectrum or other neurological things, but it can also include gifted, anxiety, ADD. There's all of these unseen things that we're all going through at different phases of our life. I think many of us triggered many of these during the pandemic. So not only were we changing how we work from a technical aspect, but really how we interact, as JJ, you mentioned. So I just wanted to start there and talk about what we really want to share today about it, and why you're passionate to talk about this topic today, JJ.
So, I love the definition. In fact, I think that's how Harvard defines neurodiversity. But, I just wanted to point out one simple thing is that all of us are different, and each one of us should not view these differences as deficiencies, but more about celebrating it. And it's all about us understanding these differences and finding ways and means that we can celebrate those differences and work together to achieve a common goal, as something as simple as releasing a product update, a great marketing campaign, or just being two nice people. It's as simple as that, in my opinion.
Yeah, so we want to connect the dots today between neurodiversity and the value that it brings to our world, to our companies, to our communities, to our families, and really help it become more acceptable, more aware, and for people to think about it a little differently. You can't necessarily look at someone and know if they're dealing with these things, right? I have small children, so I'll often try to explain things like just because they're not using crutches or they're not, hurt or bleeding doesn't mean that they're not dealing with some type of situation. And I don't even think that's a great analogy because it's not like a bad thing, right? It's something that's a very, very important aspect of taking our world to a better future. So what do you think about the value of neurodiverse teams as you've seen it, JJ? What are some things that you've seen? We know that there's some famous, many famous people that have changed our world have been neurodivergent, especially when it comes to innovation. Elon Musk, Thomas Edison, Mozart. There's been many amazing people that have changed the course and trajectory of so many lives that have had this gift and talent to look at things differently. So can you talk a little bit about the value that you've seen of having neurodiversity on your teams and in your communities?
So before I'll go down that path, I just wanted to bring up something. Many a time whenever we have a problem, we try to resolve it using the same steps. And what we realize is that repeatedly we throw the same, 5 steps to address a problem, and we realize at the end of that exercise, that day, that week, that we've not really resolved it. So what I think about neurodiversity is about coming in with a different perspective. I bet all of us, whatever work that we do professionally and personally, we always ask another person for a fresh pair of eyes to look at that work. It's the same thing, people, for example, with autism, have an amazing capability in pattern recognition, observational attention to detail, deep focus, honesty. People with ADHD are more creative, more original thinking. They're highly adaptable to uncertain conditions. They're willing to take action in periods of unpredictability, heightened goal orientation. I mean, if you hear these strengths as a hiring manager or as a leader of an organization, aren't these the kind of traits that you put high up when you want to hire somebody? So when you look at it like that, it's a beautiful bunch of traits to take and leverage. It's just that at times we're not comfortable, especially, like I was mentioning with people with autism and ADHD, honesty. When there is a problem, if I were to tell you, hey, Nicole, I don't like the way your hair looks like, as opposed to, hey, Nicole, I think you could have, tied up your hair in a different color. I mean, whatever that is, I think you get what I'm trying to say. It's that honesty at times that sort of shocks people. But that is a trait that, at times I think we also need in life with what's going on in the world right now. I think we need a few more honest people to just tell it as is, so that, we shake out of our slumber and try and address some of the problems that will fix issues for today, and if not for today, for tomorrow.
Absolutely. And just like in our personal lives, you may ask from advice from many different people. You're actually gathering that same diversity. What my mom tells me, what my best friend tells me, what my coworker tells me about a situation, all different, all valuable input. And that's exactly what we need when we're creating things for a better world. We need to look at things differently. We need to understand that there's more than one way to accomplish things. And like you said, these are all gifts. Attention to detail, honesty, caring. If someone's overwhelmed, it's probably overwhelming. So maybe everyone can take a breath together and we could start to integrate. In fact, in my studies, I focus on women, studies women in tech, but a lot of things are parallel. When you look at the power of diversity, it builds better cultures because you have people that are all really coming from a better heart space of inclusion and belonging. And that is so important. It tends to make companies more money when you have more diversity because there's more people looking at things differently. And most of all, innovation, which is why we're here today. So what have you experienced in the power of diversity around innovation in your field? What are some examples or some stories that you have there?
Well, when I look at it, so I look at data, and I'm in marketing, and I have a couple of other colleagues who are neurodivergent, who haven't come, I'm going to just say come out about it. But what I find the most amazing thing about them is when they look at innovation, they look at it in simple ways. Something as simple as, a better experience for the customer. We think of fancy presentations and, all of these big facts and big words. But at the end of the day, it's simplicity is what comes from the heart. That's what's convincing. I remember, a very interesting thing. There is a particular gentleman who scours the internet and looks for products that are badly designed. And then he takes those badly designed products and innovates in them. And you would laugh when I say this, but the electric toothbrush originated from an automatic lollipop liquor. I mean, as bizarre as it sounds, someone created a product which, would just allow you to hold it and the lollipop would turn in your mouth. That person realized that it wasn't selling, but somebody bought the product and innovated on that, and that's how you have the electric toothbrush. So the thing about innovation and, people who are neurodiverse is that they look at it from a point of view that you've never thought about it. And they simplify it because they're looking at that attention to detail and patterns and just come up with a solution. Is it like that every day? I'm going to be honest, no. But when it does happen, it really happens for the right reasons at the right time in the right place.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not just coming up with the innovation or coming up with the way to look at it, but calling out things that are not right. Calling out things that they catch. So not only can they add value, but they can add awareness to ways that we're doing things that may not be the best for the business. I have a small story. When I was doing strategy and planning at a major tech company, we had 200 plus engineers on this team. So every year at the sales kickoff, I would really ask those people, what do you think about this? How should we do this? How should we, engineer these solutions, right? And I would go in with like 2 to 3 questions that I would ask everybody in conversation, right? Just to try to see like what the different answers are. And it was just really interesting because I didn't know, it wasn't a conversation about neurodiversity. It was a conversation about their ideas. Statistically, if I'm talking to 200 people, I'm dealing with someone who's neurodivergent. It just is. You just can't, you just don't know. Right. And that's why conversations like this are really important. The whole concept, right, is about being kind and inclusive and aware. This specific example is around innovation. So what I would gain from these conversations is just the ability to have so much more perspective, so much more input, and so much more great ideas on things that we could do better, different, for our business and for them. Sometimes it was like, hey, this leader makes me feel this way, or we did this project and then they didn't come back to me, or things that we can all do to raise the bar to make everyone feel more welcome. And you just never know. I think, what is that saying? You never know what someone's dealing with, so be kind. I mean, that's a very great one here, because it's just when we come from a heart space that we could start to unlock this potential. Because if they're not comfortable contributing and feeling like they're part of the team, that's a great aspect of a leader. Then they're not going to feel comfortable to give you that next $1 million idea, that next change, that next, addition of a toothbrush, right, to make that innovation worth it. So how do you deal with it? I mean, you have a personal experience. How do people know? I mean, it's kind of the burning question. Like, how can you, as an ally or yourself, like, how does it really work? What's some best practices in the workplace on how you talk about neurodiversity, how you can do it? And what we'll do is talk about maybe a couple perspectives. So maybe we could talk about it first as leaders, like things that leaders can do to help bring more innovation, but really at the end of the day, create more inclusive cultures.
So, two statistics that I want to quote, and for the life of me, I can't remember where I found this, but I think it's part of some of the diversity and inclusion work that IBM has been doing. But 1 out of every 50 people is neurodivergent. Sorry, yeah, and so correct, and so 1 out of 20 people is neurodivergent, and 1 out of every 50 people has autism of some form. So when you said you talked to 200 people, technically, you do the math, you have spoken to a few people like that. But connecting it back to your question, I'm going to share my lived experience. I realized that I was seeing patterns of work, and I was finding it extremely frustrating that my colleagues were not seeing them. And that frustration can come across as being rude, can come across as being, aggressive. And then I decided, I took a deep breath, walked a couple of steps back, and I felt that it would be easier for me to just be open about the fact that, hey, this is something that I go through. Because I go through this is some of the positive things. And unfortunately, you bear the brunt of my slight aggression and rudeness in my particular case, because I was shocked that people are not seeing those patterns that I was seeing. So I was open about it. But at the same time, my people who I worked with, my team, my managers, my colleagues, they were also equally very inclusive about that. So, it's a two-way street. And I had managers who then, and teammates who leveraged this, saying, hey, mate, we're stuck here. Can you look at this? And, it'd be, man, it's right there. Can't you see? initially I would be questioning why they couldn't see it, but now it's easy for me because they know I see patterns and they rely on me in seeing patterns. So it's in my opinion, what the right way to do it is to identify someone who will be an ally, so that it takes two to tango, as they would say. See how you can get a partner, so that that partner or that ally could point out things, be honest with you, and vice versa. You walk that journey, you live that experience together. And when people see that value, then more people start becoming allies, more people start being open about their neurodivergent lives.
And is there, I like to look at it like as a superpower, right? So sometimes I'll ask my teams, like, what is your superpower? And ask them to lean in to things that might be ways that they look at things differently, which just removes this neurodivergent, just comes down to different ideas, so that people can talk about ways that they could solve problems differently, like you said. So as leaders, in order to create more of an inclusive culture specific to neurodiversity, so that we can get, like, it really is a few barriers. It's first a mindset that leaders have to have, is that exactly that differences are not deficits, they're amazing gifts. But once we get past mindset, you have to set the pace for the team. As a leader, we'll talk about individuals next, because everyone plays a part. We all play a part in our world for this, no matter where we are. Even at a grocery store or at a movie, you could find out that you can lean into this. But specifically as leaders, if we really want to reach our best potential as a leader, as a company, as our mission, whatever it is, for whatever we're trying to accomplish, how can we do better to be more inclusive, and then to unlock this special opportunity to develop more innovation?
So I'm going to say it's a line similar to what you said. In a world where you could be anything, try and be kind. Carrying on from that, you don't know everything. It takes a village to feed a child. So when you start looking at it at that approach, you realize that you need to rally everyone around you. You need to take both the positives, and unfortunately negatives do come. But as a leader, as an individual, you learn how to take people together. You learn how to block out the negatives and carry the positives together, and build those great building blocks. Because if my right hand is strong and your left hand is strong, together, we can lift ourselves up. But if it's just you trying to pull yourself up with your one strong hand and me and the other strong hand, we're never going to get together. So it's about understanding and realizing that you have to carry everyone together, and it's about how you don't react. So I'm going to share a small thing that I did with my team. Was I realized that when I found a pattern, and I was finding others were not seeing that pattern. I think I mentioned I would get a bit rude and obnoxious. I told my team that, see, I don't realize that I'm doing that. I also don't mean any harm to any of you, but I'm so carried away because I'm so into it. So please use the code word pineapple. And whenever, luckily for me, in the last 5 years, it's been used only 4 times. But when somebody said the word pineapple, I would realize that I was getting ahead of myself. I was making the other person feel uncomfortable. It's a two-way street. How do I make you feel comfortable with me, and how do you make me? How do you make me feel comfortable with you? So again, how do you rally everybody together? How do you make yourself feel safe? How do you make others feel safe? And how do we collectively achieve that goal together? That's how I feel it has to be done.
Yeah, that's some great advice. I think I operate on a default mode of is everyone seen and heard? So diversity and inclusion, these are great. This is like what I love, right? But like how you translate that as a leader is seen and heard, because you don't know, like we said, some people may not know themselves what they're dealing with. They're just kind of trucking through the day. Something might be new. As we talked about, the pandemic has triggered, for example, increased anxiety. That's a really simple thing where, if you just let people seen, heard, and give them space. That's the third thing that I found as a leader. Like, do they feel like they're part of the conversation? Are we really hearing what they say? And sometimes are we giving them the space that they need? Because sometimes you just need to take a walk, or to take a breath, or to take a break, or take a pause. Like, just everyone needs that depending on what they're going through. And so being very sensitive to pulling my own inner voice and saying in a meeting, is everyone, like, looking around the room and saying, is everyone feeling seen and heard? Does anybody look like they really need some space right now? Like, maybe I don't need to call on Sandra because she doesn't look with it right now. And really trying to be aware. You're right. It's a two-way conversation. It's also in a way like a two-way vibration that you can really sense. If you just spend time in that inner space asking yourself those questions, you'll get those answers. It's just really hard when you have an agenda and you have things you need to accomplish and the timeline is there. Like, when you're in it and you have a mission of a meeting, as we all do, right? We need to solve this problem. We need to come up with this thing. It's really hard. So sometimes I'm like, seen, heard, space, and just try to take pauses of those. If it's an hour meeting, sometimes I'll do that. So let's see, is there any other tips for leaders in dealing with neurodiversity at the workplace? I think for HR, we have some other conversations, but if we're not bringing the neurodiverse people to the table and giving them a way to come through the door, then that's our first problem. But I'm sure that's a whole nother session on HR and hiring, because we can always do a better job at that. But what other advice do you have for leaders? Or if we want to talk a little bit about, the hiring process, I know that's definitely absolutely critical.
So the hiring process, I will be very honest, you and I are just not capable of doing it. There are specialized firms, there are specialized people who know how to do this. Leverage their help, leverage their service, because you would be doing more of a disservice to yourself in your organization and that person if you don't do it in the right way. So my opinion is, get the specialists to do it, and you just be inclusive and welcoming and just be a nice and kind person. So I hope that addresses the question that you were bringing up.
Yes. And speaking of questions, if you all have any questions, we're going to talk for a few more minutes, talk on some more topics, but we would love to hear from you. We love seeing the enthusiasm in the chat. So please continue to engage. This is really important. One thing I'll say as a leader, and let's talk about what individuals can do, is that sometimes it's good too to look at other opportunities. So if someone is in a role and it just isn't working for them, instead of trying to get them out of the company or saying this isn't for you, sometimes I found like pivoting what they can do and pairing it. We talk about hiring. That's why these firms are good, is because they can really get deeper in understanding the person, their needs and roles, and matching, which is really important. But sometimes they're at the company and they just might be in the wrong role for that talent, for that gift, for that perspective. So oftentimes I'll ask, like, hey, you seem very analytical, very good at these details. Have you looked at a role here where we can really apply more of that skill? So that was one thing I wanted to mention. All right. What about individuals? You're on teams. We're all on different teams. We talked about leaders. A lot of things apply. Everyone can make sure people are feeling seen, heard, and felt. But what do you think we can do better as individuals to help encourage more innovation through neurodiversity?
Again, I'm just going to boil it down to one word: awareness. Like I said, one of the key traits of being neurodivergent, some form of the neurodivergence, is honesty. And in a professional environment, we're so used to masking the truth. When I say the truth in your face, people in most cases react badly. That's the word I'm going to use. So my thing is, people are saying the truth not because they don't like Nicole. They're saying the truth because the truth is the truth. So as an individual, how do you learn not to take offense and just say, okay, take a deep breath and say, okay, this is a point of view that's been made. I don't like it. I don't agree with it, but it is a point of view. How do I take that and move forward? Or even choose to ignore it, But the thing is not to react to it. So, I think that's where it starts off with as an individual, learning to collect the information that you've heard, choosing whether you'll use it or not, that's your personal choice, but not reacting. And when I say reacting, I'm still talking of adverse reactions. Choosing not to react would be the first step, literally, after being aware.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, interesting because we're putting this in a framework. We're both working professionals. We both have led and we're on these big teams, leading projects. And so I'd like to share how this translates. I think there's a lot of common sense things about what you said, awareness, honesty. But when we make progress in this area within the realms of corporate, within these formal conversations, how do you think this translates to the greater good of things in society as a whole? Like operating with this mind, with everything that we talked about today. These are great things that many of, like for me, for a personal, I'm putting this into my work brain, right? Like, okay, at work, if someone says something like it might be this, like I need to do this, or if someone is really I'm putting it into a container, and I don't think that we should do that. I think it needs to be brought into our whole society. So what's your perspective there on how this message translates outside of corporate and into our daily lives as we just go about our days?
So, earlier in our conversation, you mentioned Elon Musk, but I'm going to give an example of another neurodivergent leader who pretty much changed all of our lives, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
He made the iPhone, and I think all of us, or pretty much all of us, have used one version or the other of an iPhone. What I'm trying to say is that with innovation comes a lot of change. The iPhone was not the first cell phone. It was not the first touch cell phone or mobile phone, but it's changed the way all of us interact and communicate with people. So look at neurodivergent people in the workplace as people who will bring innovation, because we've been trying to focus and solve certain problems using certain steps. Approaching it from a different angle would always give us a solution that possibly help bring maybe a new iPhone. I don't know, but we have a lot of problems in this world, and we could all do with a different solution from the tried and tested approaches that are currently being thrown at them.
Yeah, and I think as I've done my work in diversity with women in technology and all diversity, nothing is easier. If you take 4 people that love this restaurant and they're going out to eat and they've been best friends forever and they all love the same food, they're going to go to that restaurant and you're going to experience that restaurant, and that's going to be what they do. But if you get 4 coworkers, they're in the car, one has an allergy, one loves Indian food, one knows the best taco place, you may end up then having more experiences that are different. We all know when you have a new experience, when you take that one step out of your comfort zone, you grow. And I'm getting goosebumps because I just think that although it's harder, where it makes us more connected. And to me, that's the most exciting thing about the human experience, is this idea that we're connected. And we hope that this has brought some things that you can do to you to think about it differently. and to consider the fact that this is such a gift to how we innovate, and absolutely critical in the field of technology, because if we do not have diversity of all kinds creating these technologies, creating the AI, creating the robots, then we will in fact put that same bias in to those systems. So we need to be very aware of that. So we're going to go to questions in a minute, but there's a lot of things that we may have. I mean, I loved your suggestion about using those firms that specialize in that. There's firms that specialize in bringing in women talent. There are solutions if you want them as a company. If you want true diversity, neurodiversity, diversity of women, all of those things, like there's solutions if you want to go find them. So we have probably some things that we can share that have helped us in our journey, that people can think about to arm themselves to be better people in the world, better individuals. But JJ and I just shared like the basics. I think you said it. I mean, it's very simple: be aware, be honest, be kind. But as far as resources, do you want to speak to anything that you think people can do to level up their game, to really make a difference, that could in fact make a difference in our world?
So before I get into resources, I just wanted to share one line. One person can't do everything, but everyone can do something. And carrying on from that, I don't have all the answers. I do not know from which parts of the world that you are, are logged in to watch this conversation. And I guess, Nicole, you would also agree you do not have all the answers. But the first thing is to ask. Reach out to somebody in HR and say, hey, is there an employer resource organization or office that I can go? I want to explore looking at neurodivergent hiring. You might be a technical director, you might be the business leader of a business unit, you might be a CEO of a large corporation, you might be the founder of a small startup. You don't know everything. Ask someone, hey, can you put me on? And that's how the journey starts. You take that first step, and that's how you do it. So reach out to people in your organization, maybe in HR, to start off that conversation. Research the internet. For sure, you will find some information. Ask a couple of other people, take a point of view, and then dive in. It's a journey you will not regret, for sure.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it starts too by understanding your own behaviors and getting to know yourself, getting to know counselors that can help you with diagnosis. I think some of this is very new, and there's a lot that we're not going to cover here around treatment medications that are beyond the scope of this, right? But the first thing could just be talking to someone if you sense that you are maybe the pandemic has caused you to feel a little differently when you're in the car, or a little differently when you're in group settings, as our world has become unfortunately a different place. But like, I think it starts with you and knowing how you can deal with yourself. And then if you feel like you're perhaps dealing with something that maybe you don't know about, so that you can have your own answers, I think I want to encourage everyone out there, if you feel it, just ask someone, take that step, be brave, and know that it doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you. It just means that you can navigate the world with better tools to do it, because you know what you're dealing with. So I want to encourage those of you out there who might think you have something, to be brave and take the first step to know it. And then the first step is for everyone to know yourself. Know yourself. Are you, like what I said, like, are you really just being kind? Are you really just starting from a place of your heart and leaning in and saying, like, we do all have value. We all, like you said, we don't know the answers. How are you today? Just having an open heart, asking yourself, are you doing that? Are you only operating in your own perspective? And that is really cool. Are you only operating in your own perspective? So asking your own self and polling your own self. In addition, I would say, if you do say have ADHD, there's communities where you can even ask, communities of other people with ADHD, how did you talk about this at work? Pull for advice in communities with people that understand what you're dealing with, on how did you do this, and don't be afraid to ask for help. or ask for things. We're going to go to a question in just a second. I'll also, and thanks a lot for that, Kyla. What I also want to encourage is that you go to employee resource organizations, and whether you're dealing with something or trying to just be a better person, you could probably always go to employee relations or HR and ask for resources on being a leader, a better leader, considering more neurodiversity as a skill, putting those things in front of everyone. Like I put all of the different events that benefit all the different people on our company in front of the people, just because that's my job as a leader. Hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Get involved in the Slack channels and things like that. Ask about your benefits. Maybe your benefit includes an assessment, or a tool or a resource or a benefit to help you move forward in it. And then we talked about hiring. So, I think it's being aware of you, and it starts within yourself. So let's go to this question. What are one or two things that you think companies can do better in hiring process? We talked a little bit about this there, so that candidates are set up for success. And we appreciate that question, Kyla, because JJ and I absolutely said we are not experts on hiring. I'm sure there's people that do this every day. That's our point. But I think we can provide probably some tips that companies can do besides the first one that we said, which is working with professionals in this area and asking your company, what are we doing? What are we doing to bring on neurodiverse candidates, and how are they handled in the process? Because sometimes that interview process could just rule them out because they don't know, they're not disclosing. So we see an increase in now as you start to get jobs. I've noticed it myself. I've had a couple job opportunities to look at over the past few years, and I've noticed there's more questions about that where you can self-disclose, and that allows the company to come back more. But if you don't have even that in there, sure, you can opt out, you can decide not to, but you can certainly say, yes, I have it. And it's important that when companies say they're going to do something about it, that they don't just bring you in and check the box. That's been incredibly important to me. And I just want to say that, and I'll pass it over to you, JJ, is that when we're hiring, when we're creating cultures that have more women, have more neurodiversity, let's make sure we're not just doing it to tick a check or like to feel good about it, that we're really taking them into a culture that will continue to feed that. Obviously, I think that's something that really frustrates me when we want to bring on more numbers or to do things in that way. So I think living the culture that you're selling and promoting when you're hiring is absolutely important. And that deals with not just the hiring, but the full cycle of your people and communities. So JJ, what else are some things companies could do in hiring to help?
When you were talking about tick marks and check boxes, I was laughing to myself because you could have this fancy program, but if the culture of the organization is not welcoming, if it's not inclusive, that tick mark also is going to explode back in your face. So I think the first step is, even before you check with HR, is there a specialist who can help? Are you willing to work? Are your peers willing to work? I mean, like I said, it starts from, you can't do everything. It starts from you. So check around, are you willing to move out of your comfort zone? Are you willing to try something different? Like you said, 4 friends been going to that same restaurant once a week for the last 20 years. And suddenly somebody says, can we try something different? If the other 3 friends say no, you're never going to try that taco place or that Indian place or whatever that cuisine is. So check internally. Are you comfortable? Do you want to do it? And then, move on. That's the second step, would be, to find out that HR organization, a specialist who could help you in the hiring process.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at companies setting up neurodivergent candidates for success, it starts with HR and your people community being an open door and not being always a negative thing, right? Like having support systems where you can go to them with an inquiry and a question, and how they deal with it is very important. Very, very important. I've had a range of experiences across both sides of the coin there of HR within a company where you bring something to them. I have this concern, and how they handle it and process it, because what could happen is the success could be that they don't know what to do because they feel stuck or they feel not seen, not heard, not in the right role, and they don't know what to do. So I think it starts as well with companies having HR that, you know, one has all these perhaps embedded systems, and that's a whole nother, you know, there's tools and systems and things you can do. But I think just at table stakes, is HR considered something you go to when you're in trouble and it's a bad thing, or can you make it something where it is handled in a way where it feels exactly like what we talked about today, where those people are trained that they also need to consider neurodiversity as a piece of the puzzle when they're dealing with complaints or opportunities to make life better for people at work. Great. Well, I think we are at closing time here. I know we've kind of given our final thoughts, but what would you love to say to the audience as we leave today, JJ? This has been awesome conversation. And I really just want to thank you as well for being so open, such an ally, such an advocate, and coming on these platforms to inspire people of just like your lived experience. It's really awesome. And I really thank you for that.
So I'm just going to repeat something I said earlier. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Just be kind to yourself, be kind to your colleagues, your friends, those who you interact with. When you're kind, that kindness spreads. With kindness spreading, inclusion happens. You feel good and healthy about it. And I think that smile spreads, you know, it spreads in the right way, you know. Everyone feels cool, calm, and comfortable with that. So just be kind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We encourage you all to go try that today. Try leaning in a little bit, making people feel seen and heard everywhere you go, and just experience it. Double down on it for a day and see how it can change your life and how it takes all of us to change this world. So thank you again. And we'll sign off for now. Thanks for this opportunity. Enjoy the rest of DIFEST and these amazing topics on the important topic of diversity. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to talk with you, JJ.
Cheers. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Nicole.